I don't know why he posts videos in the middle of the night. Oh, hi, everybody. I'm not going to notify subscribers with this video. It's just going to show up. As you see in the background, there's a Christmas tree. I'm going to be reading from this book. It's a great book. I've read it a few times. 59 stories on hockey cards. And it doesn't just go into all your famous hockey cards. It goes into error cards, which are so much fun. The most fun I had was error cards and airbrushing. So, I'm going to look at a couple of error cards. We're going to do this in the same fashion that I do. Nah, you know what? I'm going to do the airbrushing first. Because the airbrushing is so awesome. Because a few of them I don't even realize are airbrushed. But some of them, it's pretty obvious they're airbrushed. And there's some funny stories about this. So I'll start with... Where am I going to start? I want something epic. Sadly, they do not have the airbrushed Ivan Boldarev. What's funny is, I noticed Ivan Boldarev was airbrushed 2 years in a row. For the 80 and the 81 cards, he was airbrushed in a Canucks jersey, the Flying V. So they had either old Blackhawks cards or whatever they had. It's hilarious. All right. The first name you guys are going to recognize, there's Bill Clement airbrushed into a Capitals jersey. Doesn't that look epic? Epic. As I said, I'm not going to make subscribers notified, so nobody can say I woke them up in the middle of the night with this. If you watch this, it's because you're watching your feed. Thousands, if not millions, of hockey fans know Bill Clement. His face is beamed into homes across North America. He is one of the game's foremost American voices. Aside from his broadcasting work, he's also a critically acclaimed speaker. But years ago, once upon a time, when little children ripped open a pack of hockey cards, this is the Bill Clement they saw. There are a few things of awesome and as disturbing as Bill Clement's 1975-76 O-Pee-Chee card. It is perhaps both the greatest and worst airbrush job in the history of hockey cards. There's no end to the amount of adjectives you could scribble down on a piece of paper to describe this card. So why not let the man himself, Mr. Clement, take it away? I saw some article on the Bleacher Report. It was voted as one of the worst cards ever, said Clement. And he's just fine with that. It was awful. Clement is sporting a huge sweater. This card has a crayon-like feel to it. The airbrush job was one of necessity. Following the Flyers' second straight Cup win, Clement was sent to the Washington Capitals. And if you think going from the Stanley Cup champs to an expansion team, which in the previous league previous season set a league record for the fewest wins in a season, 8, is no fun, you'd be correct. Dog meat is how Clement describes his Cap team. I went from the best team in the NHL to the worst team. When you win 2 Stanley Cups, you develop a bond and it's in your family. It was as if I was sort of sent out to sea by myself. It was hard. It was as if I was exiled from my family. It's not as heartwarming as the usual bedtime stories I read, is it? But it's a story. And that trade, made in the spring of 1975, set into motion what we are still in awe of nearly 40 years later. Bill Clement's 1975-76 O-Pee-Chee with its giant, crudely drawn sweater, and no space at all between Clement's arm and body. And how about those legs? Someone's in need of a new set of shin pads. It looked like I had Eaton's catalogs on my socks. So there you go. Now look at it again after that description's given. Here. That way it'll focus. Alright, close enough. You guys get the point. It's a terrible card. Clement can only imagine the urgency of the card makers upon hearing he'd been sent to the Caps. They had no picture of me in a Capitals uniform, and the Capitals made me captain. And you know, I was like a big deal going to Washington. I mean, as big a deal as that could be. And they wanted a card. That's a hand-painted Washington Capitals uniform under me. I can see somebody cutting out a little head of a picture of mine and pasting it on a storyboard, and then whatever technology they had making it work, but it's awful. Clement says awful. I say, well, awfully beautiful. Regardless of your take, plenty of people do hold on to this card. When Clement runs into someone tightly holding on to this cardboard treasure, he often offers up a little query. I ask, do you know who the other guy is in that picture? Take a look. Take a close look. The guy is rocking your standard 70s haircut. He's a left-handed shot on those dog meat Capitals. He was not a famous hockey player, but his brother was. That's Gordie Smith, Billy Smith's brother. So that's the big trivia question I ask people after they finish laughing at the card. I ask them, okay, if you really want to be good at this, who's the guy in the picture with me? And hardly anyone's ever gotten that. Clement's time in Washington was short-lived. After 46 games in his airbrushed Caps uniform, Clement was sent to Atlanta. The trade to Atlanta was part of a whirlwind 3 days adventure, one that comes to mind when Clement reflects back on his airbrushed goodie. I'm also the answer to a dubious trivia question involving Washington. No sooner did that card come out when I became the answer to this trivia question. Who's the only player in NHL history to play three games on 3 consecutive nights for 3 different teams in the NHL? Asked the player turned broadcaster. The answer, of course, is Clement. He played an All-Star game in Philly on Monday night, drove back to Washington, suited up for the Caps the next night. Then the next day he's traded to Atlanta. The Flames happened to be in Philly that night, so Clement hopped in his car, drove 3 hours to Philly, and dressed for his 3rd game in 3 different nights in his 3rd different uniform. I don't know how I made it through the 3rd game because I'd been up half the night after the All-Star game, and then after the game in Washington I didn't get traded until the next day. They worked me out. I stayed up late with the guys in Washington. They wanted to hear about the All-Star game. I hardly had any sleep. Tommy McVie killed us in practice the next day and then said, Max McNabb wants to see you. And I get on the phone with Cliff Fletcher, Atlanta's GM, after Washington traded me, and he says, we need you in Philadelphia tonight. I was like, you bleeping kidding me? I can hardly lift my arms. And I went back to Philly and played that night. And we got smoked, I think 7-2. And I slept for a day and a half. But that 36-hour slumber and the 36-plus years that followed Clement's trade to Atlanta will never erase the memory of his time in Washington. That airbrushed piece of art ensures that. It ensures the memory of Clement's time with the Caps will live on forever. It's one of the ugliest hockey cards ever, and I'm proud to say I was part of it. Amen. All right, now I'm going to move up a little bit. Move the microphone up a little bit. There we go. And we're going to talk about this guy, because this guy wrote a book recently with Ken Reed, the author of this book. And honestly, I can say this book, there's 59 stories in this, so I can't read enough of this to destroy any reason for people to buy it. It is well worth buying. Dennis Maruk. So this again is airbrushed. Here's the funny thing. It says now with capitals, and look what they airbrushed on him. North Stars. If you look at the card, it shows he played for the Seals and the Barons. I think I know where this story's going, and it's funny. The Fu Manchu? Dennis Maruk asked as our interview began. Yes, we will get to the Fu Manchu, but first a little background on the man with the Fu. There's not a lot of players like Dennis Maruk in today's game, but if the game continues to go in the right direction, a few more might just start showing up. The dead puck era took players like Maruk out of the game. Why in the world would you want a 5'8", 165-pound sniper who could seemingly score at will when you could settle for a 6'4", 235-pounder who couldn't move? Size meant pretty much everything in the game during the mid to late 1990s and early 2000s. If a smaller player wanted to make it, chances were he needed to be a pest, not a sniper like Maruk. Luckily, the game is moving back towards more skilled players. See a rather slight Ryan Nugent-Hopkins for evidence. So let's get to the uber-skilled Dennis Maruk and his 78-79 O-Pee-Chee. Dennis Maruk is a green Washington Capital. Dennis Maroon is a green airbrushed Washington Capital. Dennis Maruk is a green airbrushed Washington Capital with one of the greatest mustaches in NHL history. There's no arguing that. The turbulence of the late 70s NHL is responsible for this classic O-Pee-Chee airbrush job. The card is a cavalcade of colors with a fantastically painted green helmet and a brand spanking new painted North Stars jersey. Up in the left-hand corner, we get a nice little blue to go with a red banner. And of course, the classic O-Pee-Chee, now with capitals, is printed on the front. When they made that card, you want to make sure that that's the team you're playing for, right? It's kind of funny. Maruk had put the fine folks at O-Pee-Chee into overdrive. Think about what they were up against. A merger between the North Stars and the Barons set Maruk to mini. Hence the green airbrush job. But then after just 2 games with the North Stars, where Maruk says he played 1 shift, he was traded to the Capitals. Thus the now with Capitals update neatly typed in the bottom left-hand corner of the card. From Cleveland to Minnesota to Washington, that's a lot for a player to take. A lot for a card company as well. But the turbulent times were par for the course for Maruk early in his career. Of course, he was in Cleveland after the California Golden Seals moved their franchise from Oakland. Maruk racked up 94 goals in his first 3 NHL seasons. He spent year 1 in Oakland and years 2 and 3 in Cleveland, where he was almost a point per game player. But these were uncertain times in terms of both your career and your address. Oakland and Cleveland didn't exactly play in front of sellout crowds. You had to play hard because you knew something was going to happen with that team. And Oakland, Cleveland, and then early into Washington was kind of, oh, geez, what's going to happen? I kept pushing forward. I knew that I had some pretty good seasons. I knew that if I kept playing hard, and there was that situation that we were going into a dispersal draft, that I'm sure I would have been selected by a number of teams, even a better team. That's a lot for a young guy to take, but eventually things settled down in Washington, and in 81-82 everything fell into place. Playing on the line with Ryan Walter and Chris Valentine, Maruk became just the 7th player in NHL history to score 60 goals in a single season. And here's the kicker. His 60 goals were still 32 short of the league lead. We were all in a different league, and then that other guy was in his own league. I think his name was Wayne Gretzky. The Great One may have been in his own league, but Maruk was in a pretty amazing league as well when he amassed 60 goals, 76 assists for 136 points. Maruk had finally found a home just a few years after his epic 78-79 piece of commemorative cardboard. When you look at the card, it is tough to judge what stands out more, the green airbrush job or the foo. Let's focus on the foo. A lot of people say it was pretty cool. They say, well, Lenny McDonald had a good stash. And then they see my stash and go, how come they don't talk about Dennis Maruk's stash? That thing was awesome. It turns out we have a world of baseball to thank for Maruk's facial exploits. It all started one day simply enough when Maruk was watching a Kansas City Royals game when he saw a hard-throwing baseball pitcher that the world knew as the Mad Hungarian sporting a magical, classic Fu Manchu. At that moment, Maruk knew that he had to do what he had to do. Al Roboski. He had the Fu Manchu, and right after that I started the Fu Manchu. Thank you, Al, and thank you, Dennis. These days, Maruk is a busy man, a busy, clean-shaven man. He runs a hockey camp in the summer, plays up to 30 alumni games each winter, and dabbles in trade shows. While the airbrushing of the 70s is a distant memory, the card's a reminder of his 2-game stint with the Minnesota North Stars. He would play 4+ seasons in Mini later in his career. Today, the mustache makes an appearance only on Maruk's business cards. I made one up like a hockey card, but it's a business card with my Fu Manchu picture, and to the right, all my info. And on the back are all of my stats. And Maruk still pads his stats out on the ice, playing quite a bit. At his weekly Monday skate, Maruk plays with, among others, a wealthy business developer. The man has money, but money can't buy everything. He comes up every game and goes, I'm pissed at you. I hate you. And I go, why do you hate me? And he looks around and he goes, because you got a hockey card and I don't. You hear that from a billionaire, a very wealthy man? That's kind of cute. There's your stories for tonight. Again, Ken Reed's book. I highly recommend anything Ken Reed writes. The guy is very good at writing books, considering he's a hockey announcer, although they are pretty good at writing books. I have found that over the years. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Everybody have a good night. And there's our Christmas tree. I think it's wonderful. I'm guessing it was 90% Yvonne, 10% kids.
Yeah, well, they did the ornaments. I didn't do any ornaments. So, I did have to tell them you can't just put them right down the strip down the middle, though.
That's because you got the eye for it.
But I stand right here.
Yeah.
We do stand in other parts of the room, you know.
There you go. So there's your bedtime story for tonight, and I won't set notifications so that it doesn't wake a bunch of people up. That's how considerate I am. Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through and you came upon this, and I will include this in the Bedtime Stories playlist. Good night, everybody.